This is Newsroom. Hello and welcome from Johannesburg in South Africa. I'm Sam Marshall. This show is live and broadcast from our studios in Auckland Park. We're also streaming live on YouTube with the entire show available on our YouTube channel. We speak to one of the architects of the Freedom Charter. Today is also the 60th anniversary of the adoption of the Freedom Charter. We chat to a young man who believes positivity and optimism will benefit the youth of South Africa. But first, let's get the day's news with Anine Domel.
Good morning on this Freedom Day. I'm Anine Domel. Let's just have a look at the stories making headlines today. The ANC says South Africans will mark Freedom Day amid violence that has wrongly portrayed the nation as xenophobic. The ruling party says it is encouraged by calls for unity and peace since the violence erupted. President Jacob Zuma is expected to deliver the Freedom Day keynote address at the Union Buildings in Pretoria this morning. This as South Africans celebrate 21 years of its political liberation under the theme celebrating the beginning of the third decade of our freedom through accelerating radical economic transformation. Zulu King Goodwill Zwelithini has meanwhile urged foreign nationals residing in rural areas to provide relevant documents to prove they are in the country legally. The king addressed the community of Nondweni yesterday. He asked South Africans in these areas to report foreign nationals to local authorities before accepting them into their homes.
Every South African must always inform the Induna before accepting someone in their home. The Induna must get all the relevant documentation and satisfy himself that the papers are correct. The police and Home Affairs must also be involved to authenticate the documents.
International Relations has criticized a decision by Nigeria to recall its High Commissioner to South Africa. This in the wake of attacks on foreigners in the country. The Department of International Relations and Cooperation says South Africa will, however, not withdraw its High Commissioner in Nigeria.
If this is in reaction to the attacks on foreign nationals in certain parts of our country, it would be very curious that a sisterly country would want to exploit such an unfortunate incident in our country for whatever agenda.
Hundreds of people are expected to bid farewell to former Bafana Bafana star John Shoes Moshweo today. His funeral service will be held at the Grace Bible Church in Soweto. The 49-year-old passed away on Tuesday last week after a long battle with cancer. Shoes Moshweo played a key role when Bafana Bafana won the African Cup of Nations on home soil in 1996. And Nepal's devastating earthquake has claimed the lives of more than 3,200 people. Thousands more are injured. Dozens of people are also reported to have been killed in neighboring China and India. Avalanches have killed at least 17 people on Mount Everest. As rescue missions and aid material have started arriving in the country, a team from the South African NGO Gift of the Givers hopes to leave for Nepal tomorrow. Well, remember, you can find all of those stories on our Newsroom Facebook page. Just search for Newsroom. You can also follow us on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Sam, over to you.
Thanks, Anine. Now, on the 27th of April 1994, South Africa finally walked away from its dark colonialist past and threw off the shackles of white minority domination by electing Nelson Mandela through a free and fair voting process. South African lawyer, politician and activist Leon Wessels played a pivotal role in the shaping of the new democratic order before he was a cabinet minister in the National Party government. He entered politics in 1977 as a member of parliament for Krugersdorp. Leon Wessels participated in the CODESA negotiations at Kempton Park between 1991 and 1994 to work out a peaceful post-apartheid solution that is enjoyed today and celebrated by all South Africans. He joins me now in studio to talk about that mapping out process and where we find ourselves today. So good morning. Thank you very much for joining me here.
Good morning.
Let's go back to 1994. We are sitting in a country that is about to have massive change and you find yourself in a time where you have to be part of something that all South Africans today celebrate. Take me back to what you were like back then, and what was the mood on the ground then?
Well, 1994 was an extremely joyous and momentous occasion, but one should not lose sight of the fact that since Mandela's release in 1990, South Africa had been preparing the ground for that moment.
Yeah.
And so the build-up was a very strange country and a situation to be in. You were meeting people you had been reading about for years in books and documents, and suddenly you meet eye to eye and you come to realize, but this man is as human as I am, and we are charged with a responsibility to build a new South Africa. So in 1994, the night before the election, that was the culmination of everything that had went before the previous 4 or 5 years. It was extremely exciting.
Obviously, a lot of work went into, and you alluded to it, to that 1994 election. Talk to me about some of the efforts on the ground to make sure that there was a transition after that election into a new democratic dispensation, and that everybody, from whether it was socially, politically, understood where the country was moving to.
I think it will be a grossly unfair to claim here and now today that we had done the groundwork properly. We were painting with large brushes, and everyone knew change had to come, change had to happen. But we did not know and did not foresee the detail of that. And that is the reason why when we went to the polling stations on the 27th of April in 1994, we had an interim constitution, but we had agreed that we will then continue to draft the final constitution built on 34 principles. And those principles were broad and were vague. For example, the one principle that I love dearly is the principle that says that everyone, now that means everyone, shall enjoy all universally accepted human rights, not only your favorite human right. And so we knew a lot of work had to be done post-1994, but it was urgent, it was imperative when Chris Hani was killed on the 10th of April 1993 that South Africans should realize that democracy will be the outcome of these negotiations. It's not going to be talks never ending as if there was no finish line to that. South Africa had to realize there was going to be a democratic election. And that's why the date, 27th of April, was set shortly after Chris Hani's assassination. So in that sense, South Africa knew what was expected and what would happen. What we did not know is how much effort it would really take to build and integrate all the different administrations, be that homelands, be that provincial administrations, local authorities, government departments. That was a major effort, which I was not involved in directly because I was then involved in drafting the final constitution. And so we were filled by idealism and enthusiasm and the joy that South Africans would now not be at each other's throats, but would be working shoulder to shoulder, building this new South Africa.
So there was idealism, there was enthusiasm. 21 years later, we are reflecting upon some really dark times in our new democracy. Some harrowing moments been seen through media, some real issues about identity, unity, political discourse, our public spaces. How do you relate to that now, knowing where it came from?
Once again, I'm filled with enthusiasm because you know that a nation does never arrive. You never arrive. There's no full stop, no dead end. You continue to work and grapple. For example, somebody who was born in April 1994 is 21 years old. Now, as a 21-year-old person looking ahead at your life, you are filled with optimism and dreams about your career, your future, your family. How are you going to build? And that individual, you cannot blame such a young individual saying, I'm not interested in what happened in 1994. I'm interested in what is in this for me here and now. And I think those of us who were involved in 1994 and the years before must realize we had given this generation freedom, but we have also saddled them with a lot of burdens and challenges.
Many can argue, Mr. Wessels, that we have the greatest constitution in the world. It's got, on paper, it looks absolutely magnificent. But in practice, when you try and implement this constitution, that it's not practical.
Well, let me deal with it on two levels. First of all, when you deal with a constitution, just remember that when we drafted that constitution, we wanted a constitution to be inclusive. And when the final constitution was signed by Nelson Mandela, he said, we now have the inclusivity that we were denied 100 years earlier in 1902 at the end of the Anglo-Boer War. So you had that document on paper, which gave an indication where we came from and what our hopes were for the future. But there are a number of things that you can never legislate. You can never legislate a mindset. You can never legislate dedication. Now, just two issues that has got nothing to do with the Constitution, but that we are saddled with. Thabo Mbeki said we have civil servants, good ones. But then we also have civil servants who arrive as late as possible, leave as early as possible, and do as little as possible. That is in spite of the fact that you have a constitution that says we want a constitution and a public service to serve the nation, but to Pele. All of us, this is for us, and not Runa Pele, me first, the nation first. You cannot legislate that. So South Africans, in some respect, lack the dedication for this country to realize its full potential. And on another plane, you cannot legislate honesty. You cannot legislate commitment. So there are shortfalls. But I'll rather deal with the situation that we have today than dealing with the situation we had to deal with way back.
Take me way back quickly, and as part of this conversation, I'm interested in the drafting of that constitution. Was everybody of like mind when you sat down, or was there people that were part of that but still had to be convinced? What was that negotiations like?
It was an exciting period, albeit that we disagreed on detail. We agreed on principle. Now they often say the devil is in the detail. So we had to haggle and argue and fight. But we never fought as people who did not believe that we could not resolve it. And that was what made it so special.
Mr. Wessels, and I want to, excuse me, I want to bring it back to this conversation of today. And I think many of you will agree that our situation today, we've heard the President say we have a good story to tell on more than one occasion, that this is a better discourse to deal with than the one pre-1994. How do you, in your mind, and with the knowledge that you have, the statute debate, the issues around how the born frees relate. We've seen the removal of the Cecil John Rhodes statue. We've seen the defacing of many other statues. And many people, one sector of the conversation talks about, well, we should have them in our public space so that we know where we come from. Others are saying they're relics of the past and they should be put somewhere else, and maybe there needs to be education around them. Where do you weigh in on this debate?
Let me just make one point, which is a crucial one, namely that you must know where you come from. You must know your past, because you are not fighting for a better past. You are fighting for a better future. That will always be the driving force, arguing, building, fighting for a better future. As far as the statutes are concerned, the statutes reflect the past, but they do not inspire us as we reach out to the future. The road statute, for example, one of the arguments that I listened to that I was attracted to was the argument that said roads do not reflect the values that we aspire to achieve. Now, that is a sound argument. It does not, however, take away the fact that there was a Cecil John Rhodes, and he did play a part. You may not agree with that, and therefore there has to be a place in history for him, but not on the front page or on the forefront or on the doorstep of your house.
How do you reflect on 21 years of freedom personally?
Well, my personal journey is one that I am so thankful for, because I learned to discover South Africa with all its complexities and everybody that call themselves South African.
So we're going to leave it there, but thank you very much for joining us. South African lawyer, politician, activist Leon Wessels, reflecting on the 27th of April, 1994. South Africans celebrate Freedom Day today. It represents 21 years of the country's political liberation. Today's theme is celebrating the beginning of the third decade of our freedom through accelerating radical economic transformation. President Jacob Zuma is expected to deliver the keynote address at the Union Buildings in Pretoria this morning. The ANC says South Africans will mark the day amid violence that has wrongly portrayed the nation as xenophobic. The ruling party says it is encouraged by calls for unity and peace since the violence erupted. However, it says the solution lies in addressing both the grievances of foreigners and South Africans. The party says it will encourage government to speedily introduce reforms on immigration. Let's just take a look at your tweets. Please remember to send us your views on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Let's take a quick look at the comments. This comes from Gabriello, who says, happy hashtag Freedom Day, hashtag proudly say, let's all love one another, and hashtag peace. Viwe Bobana says, happy hashtag Freedom Day, South Africa. I remember the goosebumps when Francois Pienaar and Neil Tovey lifted those trophies in 1995 and 1996. And that, of course, when South Africa became the Rugby World Champions and the African Nations Cup champions. Jawbone says, let's embrace the diversities and nurture the freedom of our country. Have a great day off, South Africa. Hashtag Freedom Day. Hashtag Restoration. From Malon Labe, it says, true freedom is where thoughts, actions align with that which is true, correct, and of honor, no matter personal price. P.H. McGill. Hashtag Free Freedom Day. And there's some great Freedom Day pictures here as we celebrate. Now, today's picture of the day comes from Global Giving, moving first-hand account of the Nepal earthquake. Let's now take a look at the front pages from around the globe. Starting in Europe, the International New York Times, residents were on a difficult search for safety in a city where thousands have died and homes and temples have been reduced to rubble. Also in the USA, the Wall Street Journal leads with that story. Rescuers in Nepal struggled to reach remote areas hit by Nepal's most devastating earthquake in roughly 80 years. And in Nigeria, the Vanguard reports that investigations into the circumstances of the alleged $20 billion missing from the coffers of the Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation will be a priority for the incoming administration, President-elect Muhammadu Buhari said yesterday. Okay, let's take a look at what's happening around the country today. We start in Cape Town, where a sculpture of late former President Nelson Mandela will be unveiled at the City Hall, where Madiba made his first speech after being released from prison. Then in Port Elizabeth, the Eastern Cape Premier, Mr. Phumulo Moshoele, will be hosting the Provincial Freedom Day celebrations at the Maclear High School grounds. And in Kimberley, foreign nationals, together with South African community members living in Douglas, will take to the streets in a march to show their support for anti-xenophobia. Now, former Bafana star player John Shoes Mshweya will be laid to rest today. The funeral service will be held at the Grace Bible Church in Soweto. The 49-year-old passed away on Tuesday last week after a long battle with cancer. Shoes Mshweya played a key role when Bafana won the Africa Cup of Nations on home soil in 1996. He was the 2-goal hero when Bafana beat Ghana 3-0 to book a place in the final of that tournament. Shoes had a successful stint in Turkey before returning home to wind down his colourful career by winning the league with Kaizer Chiefs, where he also scored vital goals. On Friday, his former friends and colleagues packed the Grace Bible Church for his memorial service. Hundreds of people are expected to converge at the same venue today to bid him farewell before he's taken to his final resting place. SABC sports reporter Tabiso Sotole is in Pimville, Soweto. Let's cross to him now. Tabiso, good morning. Thank you very much. I can only imagine it must be deeply emotional. We saw comments from Clive Barker describing him publicly as his son, as an amazing man who not only on the pitch but off the pitch was an extraordinary human being.
Indeed, Simon, thank you very much for joining us right here at the Grace Bible Church in Pimville, Soweto. I must say, you know, most of the former Shoes' teammates, in fact, you mentioned most of them right now in that intro, that 1996 final of the AFCON. Most of them have literally just walked in behind me, the likes of Dr. Khumalo, your Lucas Radebes, Mark Fish. All of them literally just walked in behind me to come and pay their final respects to the man that, as you said, Clive Barker called the engine of the Bafana team back then. And you remember how, in fact, I think it's only fitting, so to say the least, that on a Freedom Day as we have it today, we say farewell to another man who, and the team and the squad obviously, who brought much joy to South Africa at a time when most of, well, the country in itself needed some closure as far as looking ahead to the South Africa we know today. You mentioned the fact that there'll be hundreds of people coming in to pay their final respects. Indeed, there will be. Already seen here. We've been here for about 3 hours already, Sam. They're all Kaizer Chiefs, well, mostly Kaizer Chiefs fans and teammates, the likes of Jabu Pule, people who've played with Shoes in his stellar career, both in South Africa and abroad, have been in here, and obviously other followers from other clubs like Swallows, Orlando Pirates. Obviously deep-rooted history in the area, deep-rooted history in South African football, in Soweto in particular. I mean, you know, Swallows and Pirates, those are the original derbies, so to speak. So all of those clubs, they're here to pay their final respects to the likes of John Shoes Mshweya, who a lot of people, you know, I think he is a legend in his own right. I think we use that name loosely sometimes, but when you think of people like Shoes, these are really true legends of the game, on and off the field, so to speak, because he did leave a lot in as far as both development-wise. I mean, he came back to Chiefs, he helped a bit when he came back, when his career ended out in Turkey. So there's a lot, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot that's going to be said from inside when everyone speaks. Sam, can you still hear me?
Tabiso, thank you very much for setting the scenes for us. And, of course, throughout the course of the day, we'll be crossing to Tabiso Sotole. We'll be watching that service for us. Some really high-profile soccer stars, dignitaries, politicians expected at John Shoes Mshweya, of course. And I think I heard my director say we've got Neil Tovey on the line. Well, there we've got him on stage, and that was at the memorial service, of course, on Friday. You know, loads of people. Neil Tovey, of course, was the captain in 1995, I think, 1996, when South Africa lifted the AFCON championship trophy. And everybody remembers Clive the Dog Barker was in charge of the team then, and it was absolutely mind-blowing. We'll show you those visuals of that memorial service, but the actual, of course, Dr. Ramatisela, who hosts a show here as well on the SABC channel and on Channel 404, talking about his interaction with John Shoes Mshweya. We do know that for a period, John not only played for Bafana, played for some local teams, but had a stellar career in Turkey. And when he came back, also won some local championships here as well.
I had the honor of serving this team as their team doctor. And I will always attest to the fact that when we sat for team talks just before big matches, and Clive would be announcing the players that are going to be in the starting 11 for the day, Clive has a very unique style of, as he announces that Andre and say you're going to be in goal, he gives them instructions at that particular time. Then he'll move on to the late season, give him instructions. Go to Lucas Radebe, Mark Fish, Neil Tovey, Aaron Tickler. When he gets to the midfields and says, Shoes, I will leave you for last. Doctor, I will leave you for last, and then goes on to announce the rest of the team. Because he just believed that these two players would always give the team something extra special, and didn't want to create any problems, that everybody just has to understand that these are the players who have the responsibility of taking the team forward. And I'm very happy, Neil, that you touched on that particular point. At this point, I'm going to call Buhle Ntlangisela, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, to render a musical item. Buhle, are you ready?
And those visuals coming from the memorial service of John Shoes Mshwe, memorial service that was attended by many, including Clive Barker, who was a coach and described him as a son. Today, of course, the funeral service will happen at the Grace Bible Church in Pimble, Soweto, and we expect it to be a deeply emotional sight. But SABC, of course, will carry some live visuals for you and some updates from that funeral here on Freedom Day. Now, the Mind Ad Thumbs Up Foundation is a non-for-profit organization that has understood the importance of positivity. This initiative intends to orchestrate a new generation of positive thinking and progressive young people in South Africa and Africa. The foundation was started in 2012 by two young men, and I'm going to give their AKAs. It's Mind Ad and Crisp, who understood the value of being positive and progressive in today's life. The Mind Ad guys joins me here in studio. Guys, thank you very much for joining us. Let's start with a Mind Ad. Why is positivity so important? We often talk about youth and the role that they play in a progressive society and kind of the values that they can add, but we don't really talk about a positive youth, a youth that share in optimism.
Yeah. I think with positivity, there's a lot of things that can be drawn from it because, I mean, it is positivity after all. But like growing up, we experienced a lot of negative people, you know. A lot of people told us that we couldn't make it, we couldn't do this, we couldn't do that. And we just thought that, you know what, if we could cultivate some kind of foundation to help other kids that grew up like us, so that we essentially try to eliminate the negative factors that we are faced with as growing young Africa.
Chris, when Mind Ad spoke about this foundation and talked about this thumbs up idea, and whenever you go online or on any forms of social media, you always see people with the thumbs up, the sign for positivity. What was the conversation then? Because you were saying that we grew up with a lot of negativity. As two young men, what was the aim then?
The idea was having something that will communicate positivity in the most simple way possible, whereby if you take a picture with your thumbs up, and you know about the foundation, you can quickly pick up on that these people are trying to be positive, and usually it's people that are trying to do something with their lives, and we wanted a concept that would inspire other young people. So that's how we got to the Mind Ad.
And the hundreds and hundreds of pictures all over social media. Today we're celebrating 21 years of freedom. Personally, quickly reflect on that for me, starting with you, Mind Ad.
I think 21 years of freedom. First of all, I'm 25 in October. So for me, when we gained our freedom and when, I mean, I was born in the year that Madiba was released, you know, but I think just reflecting back on the 21 years that we've had, I mean, we've had a lot of education about our freedom. We've had a lot of education about our history, where we come from, and not going back there. And that's the kind of a positivity change that we want to see going forward. We want to celebrate 21 years of positivity one day, you know what I mean? Having cultivated young Africa throughout the continent, you know, like with positivity, with this, with that, so that we can essentially reach a part where we know that people are positive, and when we just find somebody who is negative or something like that, we just kind of not shut them down, but show them the positive of positive.
Reflect on 21 years?
21 years. The significance about our country is our history. And it's very important for us as young people to reflect on these milestones. As mine that linked it to positivity, not too many people are too positive about freedom or 21 years of freedom. Yes, we are free, but you do get people who are still in the situations that they were before freedom. Now, those people, I would like to say to them, stay positive and think of ways that you can better your life and better the lives of the people around you by positivity.
You travel all over the country and you do talks and stuff like that. The Thumbs Up Foundation is one of the things that you do. Anybody you interact with needs to give you a thumbs up.
Yes.
Talk to me about how that has kind of become this little movement on social media.
Okay, so it started out as just, a thumbs up is a green light, you know what I mean? It's a green light, it's an international symbol for everything's good, everything's okay, and all that stuff. So I started doing it after positive meetings with people when I was just like, wow, I can't believe that this is actually happening kind of situation, you know? And then, Chris also saw what was going on and he was like, you know what, we can make this an actual thing, you know? We can make people do a Mind That Thumbs Up. We can make people really, really catch onto it. So I started doing it at parties, at schools, little schools that we shot at with the, I see Flex Boogie over there. Oh, hello. So basically it's just cultivating positivity through everything that we've really, really been through, if you know what I mean. And that's basically what it's all about. I'm just excited to see.
And you've had a lot of people. You've had, I think you've had Gareth Cliff. You've had so many people part of this project.
Yeah, man. And it's good that they know about the foundation. It's good that they know about. I'm not saying that they're not positive people, but if you get the green light and you just keep going with it, then it should really, really spew positivity in your life as well. Because positivity changes.
5 seconds details. People can log on. Where can they go? Very quickly.
You can find us on Instagram at MindAdvit or at MindAd Media or at MindAd Thumbs Up Foundation.
Okay, gentlemen, we can leave it there, and I hope you spread that positivity all through the.
Get one, sorry.
Let's spread that positivity.
That's the money shots.
Right there. Okay, Chris and MindAd from the MindAd Thumbs Up Foundation, and it's all about positivity and spreading the message that, you know what, everything can be better. Okay, let's just take a look at your tweets. Please remember to send us your views on Twitter at SABC Newsroom. Right now it's from James Parkies, who says, today we lay to rest the great John Shoes Mashwe. Hashtag rest in peace, Shoes. May his soul rest in peace and his legacy live on. Then we've got one from Joby Sitole, who says, may the family of Shoes Mashwe find solace in that our thoughts and prayers are with them as they lay John to rest. We know that funeral service will start at 9 o'clock this morning. It comes from Sidwell, who says, rest in peace, John Shoes Mashwe. I appreciate that national flag on your coffin. You contribute a lot for this country. Today's tweet of the day comes from Narendra Modi. On Freedom Day, we remember the beloved Madiba, an inspiration and a harbinger of change, who strived to bring a better tomorrow for his people. Now let's take a look at what's happening on your Newsroom Facebook page today. South Africans will unite around the country today to celebrate National Freedom Day and 21 years of democracy. This year also marks the 60th anniversary of the Freedom Charter. Then the week-long Southern African Development Community Summit is set to begin in Harare today and will discuss the xenophobic attacks in South Africa, even though ministers were officially called to discuss industrialization. And more than 3,200 people have now been killed in a 7.9 magnitude quake, which hit Nepal on Saturday. It is Nepal's worst quake since 1934. You can find all of these stories and more on our Newsroom Facebook page, or visit our SABC website at www.sabc.co.za/news. We take an ad break here on Newsroom. You don't go anywhere. Welcome back. You're watching Newsroom. Arts and Culture Minister Nathi Mthethwa has called on South Africans not to abandon their spirit of Ubuntu as they celebrate Freedom Day. President Jacob Zuma is expected to remind South Africans of the importance of freedom when he delivers the Freedom Day keynote address at the Union Buildings in Pretoria this morning. This year's Freedom Day marks the 21st anniversary of the anti-post-apartheid elections in the wake of the recent attacks on foreign nationals. Mthethwa says no form of discrimination should be tolerated.
These are some of the young faces of South Africa, the future of this country. But every day when that bell rings, they all go back to different realities, different circumstances, and different backgrounds.
Some of their homes behind high brick walls, others behind corrugated sheets. Electricity here, still a dream. The face of poverty has taken on more shapes. It is here in Mansfield informal settlement west of Johannesburg where we meet 36-year-old Christine de Toit, an unemployed mother of one who lives with her husband who also doesn't work.
Maybe when my husband gets a job again, it will be better. My little girl is staying here. And sometimes it's not safe.
Christine's 7-year-old daughter attends a nearby school. She benefits from a government program which exempts poor families from school fees. But it's from these communities that some have managed to rise.
I was born and brought up in a one-room shack. Sometimes I'll feel bad that I was born in such a family, so I grew up, really under difficult conditions, but brought up to be the man that I am today.
And today, 31-year-old Spile Buthelezi is a lawyer. His poverty-stricken roots in Clement, KwaZulu-Natal, the driving force behind his success. When the financial assistance from NSFAS was not enough, he drove a taxi to fund his studies.
Would you attribute your success to affirmative action policies like BEE, for instance?
From varsity, I was a beneficiary of NSFAS. From there, I worked for one of the top firms in this country. Obviously, that top firm, it was a white law firm, as they are called, and that was due to affirmative action, your BEE, because remember, they are also required to comply, with those legislations. So, and I must say, I was made by the current government.
Among the black workforce, only 18% are skilled and in managerial positions. This is a 3% increase since 1994, while 61% in the white workforce are in top positions, a 19% increase since the dawn of democracy. Of the surveyed businesses, only 31.3% are owned by women. Among them is Rihanna Musaji, who owns a consulting firm. But this after a challenging period. Leading the team that introduced the BRT system in Johannesburg, death threats came her way, forcing her to get bodyguards when the taxi industry violently opposed the system.
Obviously, the Rea Vaya project and the kind of energy it took meant that something had to be on the back burner. And for that period, that something was my family and my home life. I think across the board, women are feeling like they have so much more to give, so much more to contribute.
The young, maturing democracy even more enticing to foreign nationals. Downtown Johannesburg, as cosmopolitan as any world capital, from the hopefuls to the academics. Professor Shadrack Guto was born in Kenya and now is naturalized.
Since I came here in 1994, of course I was a professional, a professor at Wit University. Now I'm at University of South Africa and so on. We came at a higher level of intellectual capital rather than the ordinary people. But I would say that South Africa has moved quite a lot forward, positively, but also we are beginning to see negative sentiments coming out, and we need to deal with those.
These are just some of the faces of the South African narrative 21 years into democracy. Where do you fit in?
Wow, some interesting documentary stuff here on Newsroom. Okay, so a little bit earlier we were waiting for our connection with our political SABC contributing editor, Vuyo Mvoko. Let's cross to him now as we get a sense of the Freedom Day proceedings. Vuyo, good morning. Okay, so we'll see that official address by the president in Pretoria. Let's cross to Zolisa and Jamela. A little bit earlier, I talked about the fact that Vuyo Mvoko, but in actual fact, it is SABC reporter Zolisa and Jamela who set the scene for us a little bit later on, and also will be sharing those proceedings as we broadcast live from that, and those visuals coming live from the Union Building in Pretoria. Now, the Eastern Cape is home to a number of anti-apartheid struggle heroes like Nelson Mandela, Oliver Tambo, Governor Mbeki, and Steve Biko. But 21 years since the birth of a democratic South Africa, residents of the Eastern Cape are still caught in the clutches of poverty. Zamkita Makwane visited the small town of Ngobo and felt this report.
The small rural town of Ngobo is one of the poorest in the country. The town's municipality has been trying over the past 21 years to change the lives of its residents so they can enjoy the fruits of democracy. A certain level of success has been achieved with the provision of formal housing to thousands of residents of the Masonoabe township.
If you look around the rental of the flats, even in this area, it's not less than 500 rand a month. It makes it very easy for me, even if I get a piece job for a day or two, at least now I don't use that money for a rental. I use it for groceries and clothing, so it makes it very easy.
We were struggling before we got these free houses. They have a toilet, a bathroom, and they also have a ceiling. We are so thankful to our government.
But a huge housing backlog in the Eastern Cape remains.
We've acquired land in towns and cities where people could not be moved in the previous term of government, but now people can reside anywhere they live.
While the urban areas have seen progression and development, the people from the rural areas feel left behind. In many areas like Tobosi village near Mchanyana, the residents still don't have access to clean drinking water. They share a water source with animals. The residents also do not have electricity.
We fetch water from this river. As you can see, it's a forest and it's not safe. Children take 24 hours to come to the river. Our government has forgotten us.
We are struggling here. We have to cook using firewood. Even if it's raining or cold in winter, we have to come outside to cook here.
Residents of this province are unemployed, relying on social grants. Others, like 80-year-old Nosakhe Tukai, ekes out a living growing tobacco.
A bag of tobacco gives me 3,000 rand, and this year I think I'm going to harvest 10 bags. This money helps my family a lot.
The Eastern Cape has vast tracts of agricultural land, but a lack of resources is holding small-scale farming back. The Department of Agrarian Reform says prospective small-scale farmers must knock on its door for assistance.
We buy seedlings for home-based kind of garden revival, ensuring that we adequately address the question of skills, especially to the farmers. Also, the smallholder farmers are also assisted when it comes to livestock production by genetic improvement programs that we have in the department.
A large-scale upgrade project of several health facilities in the Eastern Cape is also underway to improve healthcare provision. The province even has 3 air ambulances operating in the 3 main centers. On the educational front, the province is struggling. It recorded the worst matric results in the country last year, while the process to replace nearly 500 math schools in the province is behind schedule. Up to date, nearly 110 schools have been finished. Zimkita Macingwane, SABC News, Eastern Cape.
And that's how we come to the end of the program today. Don't forget, South Africans are celebrating Freedom Day. It represents 21 years of the country's political liberation, and today's theme, for those that would like to know, is celebrating the beginning of the 3rd decade of our freedom through accelerating radical economic transformation. That's what we're celebrating today. President Jacob Zuma is expected to deliver the keynote address at the Union Buildings in Pretoria this morning. We'll cover that for you. We'll also cover the funeral service that's currently underway of John Shoes Mushway. All of that here on Channel 404. Newsroom is broadcast live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg, every weekday morning between 9 and 10 a.m. We also stream live on YouTube at that time, with the show available on demand on your YouTube channel. We love to interact and enjoy your contributions and opinions. This is SABC News. You've been watching Newsroom. We love it in the morning.
An inherent tension that exists